Everybody, and welcome to this town hall around school reopening. Again, I'm David Baugh, and a number of our administrators and staff are joining us. Chris Durham, our tech director, is sort of managing this Zoom call. Farron Mulberry is here. Our assistant superintendent and our principals will be joining us as well. Just to inform everyone how this is going, and again, thank you for taking time to join us. We have 22 people who have submitted questions, so we will answer those questions. And the chat feature at the bottom seems like it's been disabled. It actually isn't disabled, but it is curating. It's going to be curated. So if you have additional questions, please submit them through that. We've budgeted an hour at least for this meeting. We're going to try to have additional question and answer at the end if we can get through the questions that were submitted. So again, we ask everyone to keep your computers muted so that we can get through here through the questions. And some of them are pretty lengthy. One, for instance, there's 8 separate questions in the first submission. So, let's get started. Many of the questions repeat themselves or turn up again. So for those that do repeat themselves or that are answered already, I won't address the next question when that comes up again. So I hope everyone is okay with that. This is being recorded and will be available on our website at the Corona Hub. So please, if you want to go back and check the answers, please do check the Corona Hub. So first question, if I may, please provide an update with the exact timing and status of the new HVAC system at AES. Sub-question, if the system will not be installed by 10/26, does AES still plan on opening? So installation for the bipolar ionization begins at AES this Wednesday. And then for the entire district, every single one of our 4 buildings, the Cottage, Aspen Elementary School, Aspen Middle School, and Aspen High School will all get this upgrade, which is very powerful. And we do expect it to be completed by the 26th, but if it's not by the 26th, we will let people know the week prior, and we will stay in hybrid until it is fully installed. At least that's my recommendation. Is there any update on student COVID testing or rapid testing if a student has COVID symptoms? We don't do testing. Testing is very hard to come by in our county. And so we have been exploring COVID testing as a district for over a month. We are continuing to work closely with Picken County Health, and we are guardedly optimistic that we'll have a solution for at least staff in the near future, but we probably will not be doing student testing, at least at this time. How many students will be in each classroom, and what will social distancing look like? Great question. The answer is it depends, and a lot depends on which class level, which grade level, which grade band. The guidance is 3 to 6 foot for elementary kids, and try to maintain 6 feet as much as possible for adolescent, the older students. What is the plan to keep bathroom facilities safe in each cohort? We have a more aggressive cleaning regimen than we used to, but remember, COVID is mostly transmitted through aerosol. And so cleaning the bathrooms, while very important, is something we take very seriously. Wearing a mask is your best bet to avoid getting COVID. What is the plan to keep buses safe during the winter with full enrollment? We expect to be at between 66 and 75% for bus enrollment. We intend to turn the heat up a lot and try to keep the windows as much as possible. And again, back to wearing the mask, please ask your students to wear a mask. Will the students continue to enter through separate entrances? Yes, that is the plan. We do want them to do that. Will mask usage continue? Probably for the balance of this year and probably for the most of next year. Most predictions for COVID suggest that this is a multi-year problem. And even if a vaccine is moderately successful, we will still need to wear masks for, at least this year, probably next year. Are teachers in support of going back full time? The answer is it depends on the teacher. So some are, some aren't. And it's kind of consistent with just about everything around COVID. Okay, that was Danielle's questions. Jennifer asks, fall break is right before the kids start back in person. Is the school requesting any type of stay-at-home period if people have been traveling? The answer is, Jennifer, we have tried and discussed that. We've discussed that with Pickens County Health. The problem with that is we have no way of mandating or enforcing that. And what we think might happen is that people might not be forthright with us. And so our medical team, in conjunction with Pickens County Health, said, look, just be honest with us. We'll work with you. Andrew from Pickens County Health has been great. What we do is some symptom checking. We go over it and we meet with the individuals. Teachers travel, families travel, students travel. This is a traveling town in a way that I've candidly never seen before. So trying to shut down traveling, we don't think that we could successfully do that. So we are asking people to be honest with us, and our medical team will work closely with them. So Arden, Kaywin, I hope I answered your question about buses. There won't be more buses. There are more routes. We have split the elementary and the secondary students, so we have 2 routes running, and we're also exploring a couple of other options to increase the number of buses available. But we did split elementary from secondary as a safety precaution. Stephanie asks about masks and children without masks. Even though the Colorado Department of Education says that we don't have to require masks for students 10 or 11 and younger, we think that it's in the best interest of the community overall. Scott Ryder continues to ask really great questions, really pushing the envelope. So thank you for that, Scott. If the data so overwhelmingly shows kids under 18 suffer less fatality and health consequences than with the flu, why are we not letting them circulate freely in school? The answer, Scott, is we are trying to avoid any kind of problems with COVID and transmission, right? So we are being, through an abundance of caution, we're staying in our cohorts. We're controlling movement around the school as much as possible. We're trying not to rob the children of their youth. Our students get out, they get lots of walks, they get to go outside as much as weather permits. And as we get more comfortable and familiar with things, we're going to continue to monitor the situation. Let's see. Holly Timms asks, with families heading out of town for fall break, is October 26th the best date to return to in-person school? The answer is, Holly, that the 19th would have been a great day to do that, except that we'd already baked into that week conferences and teacher work day, and then there's one day off at the end of the week. So ideally, we would have loved to have come back on the 19th. And then if you look ahead, we have, the fall break, and then you have Thanksgiving, and then you have the winter holidays. So there's not a great time left to come back to school. So Adam Sizdikiel, I apologize for not doing justice to your last name, Adam. According to the local pediatrician's letter advocating for a return to school, one of the listed guidelines is cohorting children and staff into smaller groups to limit the impact of quarantine and limit disease spread. So the question as a parent with a happy 2-day-a-week first grader is, does this proposed return to school include an elimination of cohorts at the elementary school? And if so, aren't we ignoring the local pediatrician's recommendations and therefore increasing the likelihood of disease spread? So our thinking on this, Adam, is that we are continuing to maintain the cohorts. The cohorts are bigger than they used to be. They are still very controlled, very relatively small for the most part, especially at the elementary school. And we are limiting the number of adults that come into contact with that cohort as much as practicable. And the recommendation is no more than 4 adults in the course of a day. So we're really trying to hit that. There are a few exceptions for special needs learners. What is the exit strategy? Robin asks, what is the exit strategy for AMS students to be off their Chromebooks all day in Zoom classes while they're actually in the classroom and back into a more normalized schedule with other teachers in a live classroom environment? And then the second questions, we'll address that in a minute, has to do with our kids falling behind academically. So Liz, are you on here, Dr. Mador?
Yes, I am.
Great. Could you tackle the one about the Chromebooks and all day in the Zoom classes?
Sure. So when we go back to our in-person learning, students will be in cohorts and they'll have their classroom teacher, which is their homeroom teacher, will be teaching their classes live. So they won't be in Zoom meetings. They may have some smartboard interactions. They'll have some small group interactions as best we can. And they'll have the ability to learn in a setting where they have social distancing. So I think the more important piece while they're in person will be the social distancing. The students that are, so half of our students will be in person, half of our students will be learning remotely. Those students will be learning using Zoom or Google Meet with their designated teachers, similar to the way they are now. So there'll be a week on and a week off. And the students that are in the classroom, as they move through the different content areas, so from math to language arts, for example, they will have a teacher who is either teaching that group live or broadcasting the lesson through the smartboard in the classroom. So they won't, again, necessarily be on Zoom meetings the whole day. They won't need to be on Zoom meetings because they'll be live in person with a real teacher in the classroom or on the smartboard. So I think it'll look a little different than maybe what you're imagining. When we were talking about the concurrent learning, where half the kids were live at the same time that their other half of their cohort was remote, that was called concurrent, and that entailed time on Zoom. So got a different model. You're either in person or you're remote. You're not doing both at the same time.
And again, that helps lighten the viral load and also helps if we do have to do some contact tracing, it really helps us with that effort. So, there's a lot of design work that went into this to make sure that, we are opening slowly and over time and fairly safely. But again, great question, Robin, and thank you, Dr. Mador. I appreciate that greatly. So, and Robin, your second question, how will our district address our kids falling behind academically relative to their peers across the country who have gone back to a more rigorous and normalized classroom and school environment, especially given how much time they've lost? How will they ever catch up in time for college applications? Will ASD adjust the length of the school year going into the summer to make up for this lost time? So the answer is, Robin, that we are working very hard on this. All the schools have what are called MTSS coordinators, multi-tiered systems of support. There are every intention of working with kids that have fallen behind to help them, get caught up and accelerate. We are bringing forward to the board a proposal on October 19th, and we're trying to reclaim a number of academic days to make sure that we're, at least meeting the minimum requirements by the state for this academic year. And we are proposing eventually sort of a summer enrichment opportunity for our students, but we're building that and designing that in our spare time. I will tell you that across the nation, schools are in very, very different places all over the country. Many schools are still all in remote and have not returned. Other schools have returned fully, and COVID comes in and they go into quarantine for a couple of weeks and then they come back, and that sort of thing. So this year, as a nation, and as you watch and look around the country, different things are happening in different places. We are trying desperately to recover some instructional time in this year's calendar, and the community can really help us again by really helping us keep the transmission of COVID-19 down and as low as possible. And the 5 principles of containment are huge in the community. So we really are asking the community to help us with this. The other thing that will help us stay open is making sure that if your child is sick, that your child stays home. That's really, really huge. So please, we're looking forward to partnering with our families. My brain's going so fast, my mouth can't keep up. I apologize. I really, it's a community commitment to keep our schools open. And when we talk with Pickens County Health, they routinely talk about, how they can help us open and how they can help us stay open. So going right on to the next question. Ellie Kissel, 9th grade, why aren't the schools open? Ellie, we're working on that as fast as we can. Again, I just addressed the USA, Canada, and UK. Why have we failed to be creative? Why haven't you asked us kids how we feel? I believe your principal has surveyed the students at least once or twice. And we like to think that we're being very creative in the opening within the confines of, a global pandemic and COVID-19. So we are trying hard to get open. We do believe that the best model for students is to be in-person learning. And we are studying schools that are open and trying to take their successes and apply them to our schools. So thank you for your question, Ellie. Katie, can high school students access remote learning on their in-person days if they feel ill or uncomfortable coming into the building without being marked absent for attendance? Can students leave campus midday if they have free periods in the afternoon and don't plan to return to campus that same day? And how early can students arrive to campus for in-person instruction if they're not taking the bus, and where can they go? Sarah, are you available? Because I can answer those if you aren't.
I am. No, I'm happy to answer. We are asking that, yes, if your student is ill, obviously we would ask that you would keep them home and just notify Natasha. We are asking that if a student is enrolled and it is their in-person week, they are to attend classes. They may not choose on a daily basis or from period to period which classes they attend in person or remotely. They need to be here. Yes, we have said for students who have their own transportation, if they have at the end of the day, if they have free periods and they're not planning to return, they are welcome to leave. And then students We cannot have students arrive early. We don't really have places for them to go. If they were to make arrangements, that would be one thing, but because we have the bus runs, we don't have the capacity to have a bunch of kids come to the school prior to the start of class. So I would say if they could just arrive on time, that would be ideal. I know we do have some kids who are coming with their parents, and they are actually hanging out in their parents' offices.
Okay, thank you. While I have you, and Liz Mater, a parent is wondering, when will we be announcing the cohorts?
We announced ours today. The emails just went out from Becky Oliver. So all parents received an email regarding being in cohort 1 or cohort 2, regardless if they have indicated that they will be fully remote. We still assigned every student to a cohort to allow for students to change their minds. And Becky articulated that we're going to do that on a 2-week rotation. So if a student has a chance to have 1 week at school and 1 week at home, and then they decide they want to go fully remote, or if somebody has been fully remote and decides they want to come back, we're going to do that on a 2-week rotation at the high school.
And at the middle school, we'll have 2 cohorts, and we have been working on placing students in cohorts. We're trying to prioritize keeping the 5th and 6th grade students with their current teachers. We feel like that's a very important priority that we have, but we did have 345 sibling combinations that we have to accommodate for between kids in the high school and the middle school. So Jason Thomas, who has been working so hard on this, has been placing the kids, balancing the class sizes. We want the cohorts to remain small, and making sure that those siblings are in the same either A cohort or B cohort. The last few pieces that we need to put in place have to do with students that are receiving special services. So it's kind of this giant Tetris puzzle. It's not quite as easy as it looks, because we're really not doing the A through K, L through Z. That's not our primary sorting mechanism, although that's an important factor. We're really trying to keep kids with their current teachers in 5th and 6th grade. In 7th and 8th grade, we're having to do some more schedule changes in order to split our teachers into 2 different teams. And at the 7th and 8th grade, they don't typically teach in a team setting. They're more departmentalized, more similar to the high school. So it's a long, drawn out process, but I think everyone's going to be really happy with the results. And we hope to announce that early next week, those cohorts. However, if your teachers that your students have are part of the cohort of teachers that are designated A, then you'll know that those teachers and students are going to start on October 26th, and the B cohort will start the following week. So that's one piece that we can tease that out for you if it's really critical that have some more information before next week. But just please, thank you for your patience. We're really trying to get this to align with the high school and the elementary school and all of the needs of our various families.
Great, thank you. I'm sure the parents will look forward to that, getting that information. Anna asks 2 questions. The first, what will it look like for those who choose to not attend school? We've touched on that to quite an extent, and whether you're in elementary, middle, or high school, it looks like a lot like what it looks like right now, where you're attending, you're doing it through Zoom. One of the concerns of a parent is, the amount of face time on Zoom or Google, and obviously we're trying to work on that. But it's a challenge. Screen time is definitely a challenge in the remote learning option. I'm not quite sure what you're asking. What are we doing about the increasing community positivity rate? Looking at the data today, it was looking pretty good. We seem to be at around 3.6 from the community positivity rate for today at this point in time. So that's below 5, which is where, is kind of ideal. We're asking people to be very careful in the community and to think twice about attending large events and removing masks. And please wear your masks if you have to attend a large person event. So we're doing that. Arden and Lisa both ask about the elementary school and the cohorts and why are we going back in full on the 26th. And the answer is that we really want to increase the learning opportunities for the students and can believe that this is good for our kids. So that's what we're pursuing with that. There is some concern about bringing back the middle and the high schools at the same time. I do want to point out that those are separate and distinct campuses. And while there is occasionally some student migration in the middle to high or that sort of thing, and we do share about 3 or 4 teachers at the high school and middle school, we are working very hard to maintain the cohorts and to maintain the integrity of the campuses, right? That's part of the reason we're not asking for volunteers to come in, right? Because they sometimes volunteer in different schools. So I hope that answers Arden and Lisa's questions about that. And again, we really want to try to get our younger children back into the school. And again, it is tied to the HVAC upgrades, especially at the elementary school. So we are working on that very diligently. Zach asks, who is governing, overseeing Pitkin County Health in the city regarding the extreme protocols in place regarding symptoms and days off? Gets into some details. I can tell you, Zach, Pitkin County has worked very hard and very diligently to try to control the spread or the transmission of COVID-19. They have taken in just about every stance more conservative approach than some places in the country. And I believe that has probably paid off in dividends for the county. And, they're doing a really, really good job of trying to manage it. Are we concerned about it being, I guess you could call too conservative, like one symptom, you're out, that's a concern, and especially with the substitute shortage that we have. And while we have recruited a number of substitutes, and I want to thank the many parents and community members who have signed up to be substitutes, I do want to remind this group, we have quite a few people on here that we're still taking applications for substitutes. We have relaxed, sort of the standards and the rigor, and we're trying to help folks get through that process because we could use some additional help. So Zach, good question, but I can tell you we don't oversee Pitkin County Health or the city. Let's see. Marianne Stock, will the decision to bring elementary school students back 100% on October 26th be vetted with parents in the community? So far, all surveys have combined in one question if parents agree with either a hybrid model or a full reopening, which is deceiving. I thought we asked that question and 92% of the parents said they wanted to go back to in-person learning. I'll take a look at our survey and maybe we can circle back to that. So thank you for bringing that to our attention, Marianne. So the elementary school is not going back with 100% attendance on October 16th. We did discuss social distancing. All the schools have signage. They all have directional arrows and your principal will be communicating more details about that. Let's see. Ms. Strasburger, the next question pertains to crew. Sarah, would you like to talk a little bit about Samantha's question and crew?
Sure, I have it right here. We are hearing some of that feedback that crew has not been as an effective use of time as we had hoped, and getting student feedback. I'm actually holding a seniors only coffee, I'll put it in quotation marks, but a lot of them drink coffee, on Wednesday morning. So I'm going to get their feedback. Really hear from them. I've heard from them via Student Senate and Head Boy and Head Girl. I think we absolutely want to hear their feedback on crew and how to make it better and an effective use of time. And then I think the next one's going to go back to you, Dave, from Sam about November 30th.
Right. Yeah, great. Thank you. So Sam also asks about November 30th as a target date for getting students back into school full time, and has this been finalized? Any date is tied to the status of COVID in the community. Think of it as an if-then sentence. If COVID levels are acceptable, then we would be looking at November 30th as a return for all middle school and high school. But again, those decisions aren't being made in isolation, and it's neither arbitrary nor capricious. A lot will depend on, the COVID levels in the community, depend on the community spread, which we've talked about a few times. So while target date is strong, it's also kind of, what we have found is if we don't pick dates, it's too easy to just kind of kick the can down the road. So in an ideal world, COVID rates would be nice and low, community spread would be nice and low, community transmission would be almost non-existent, and we could look at bringing all our kids back to campus on November 30th for what research tells us is the strongest academic model possible. So yes, November 30th is the target date, but I want to put that in quotation marks, right? It's a target date, but if, then we could do November 30th, okay? So a lot of disclaimers along the way. There were two other rather large questions. One from Callie was, why are we changing things up? And Callie, identifies that, things are going okay. Why are we changing it up? The answer is that it's always been the intention of the district to change it up and to bring students back to on-campus learning. Again, because it's candidly the best educational model possible. So we weigh that against, the community health challenges, and then we look at, public education. And if we can get our kids back on campus and successfully learning, then that's a major win for this year. So what we have found is that some kids are doing great in the online environment, and other kids, many kids, are struggling, really struggling hard. And we've heard from many, many parents that they want their kids back in school and they want them back now. So, we're trying to temper that desire for getting back now with phasing people in. And this is really part of a phased approach that we've been taking all along, and the desire to, make sure that we're doing the best we can to protect staff, to protect students, and to help keep COVID down in the community. We do expect COVID to come into schools, and we do have a plan for that. Elise Dreyer is our school nurse, and she's sort of the front person of a small but dedicated medical team. And we have an isolation room. If a child or staff member presents symptoms, they will go to that isolation room, and then we will notify parents. And we will work with staff members, of course, around next steps. And Pickens County Health has outlined a very detailed sort of protocol. I think, was it Zach who was talking about Pickens County Health? And yeah, so they've given us some very detailed protocols to follow in the event of symptoms. We do know kids, sometimes, you know, when you check them in the morning, they go get on the bus, and between the time they get on the bus and the time they get to school, they get sick. And so we're gonna take care of the kiddos, because that's, you know, our mission. And so we're gonna do that. But those are the primary questions. A couple of them didn't really have anything to do with the return to learning, and were anonymous. I do want to say again, if you have more questions that we did not answer, we'll have time for about 20 minutes of questions. But if you put them in the chat, they'll be curated, we'll answer them, and there'll be a written response that will go up in the Corona Hub on our website. So I do believe that we answered Margaret's questions over the course of things, and mostly Callie's as well. It didn't go deep on your two questions because we mostly answered them through other questions. At this time, we can open it for either building specific questions or district specific questions. And Chris, can you manage that? Chris Durham? Is there a way to raise hands on our particular Zoom app?
No, there's not a raise hand piece.
Oh.
There is if you open up, if you click on participants, Dave, and have it pop up to the right, like Jody Pruder.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask her to unmute. She's raised her hand.
And then Nikki. Sure. Okay, Jody.
Hi. Hi. You may have answered this, but my app was going in and out. Is there my daughter goes to Aspen Elementary. Is there an option if I wanted to keep her at home prior to the Thanksgiving break with her teacher, you know, due to some high risk situations we're going to be in around Thanksgiving, and then put her back in full school December 1st after the break? Will we be able to do that?
Sure. Just coordinate with Mr. Bastian. He can help you with that. We, again, at every level, there is a remote learning option. And we definitely want to support that. We appreciate any family exercising the discretion to you know, keep their child in remote learning. Every family has to evaluate their own sort of risk benefit to this return to schooling, and we can't begin to address those issues. But you know, if you would like to keep your child in a remote situation, just reach out to Mr. Bastian and he can help make that happen.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I see Nikki has a hand up. Nikki?
Hi, Deepa. My question is about bringing all the kiddos back into elementary school when we do. At that point, will we be getting rid of the the 5 rules of containment about social distancing?
So the big one is, and that's where a lot of the dissonance is around the 6-foot thing. And so the 6-foot thing is a guide, and you know, so everybody is kind of settled on 6 foot unless you're a younger child, and then they're very comfortable with 3 to 6 feet as long as you're wearing a mask, right? And this is why we use the layered protocols, layered mitigation, layers of protection. That's part of the reason we've invested a lot in the air quality, so it will kill COVID upon contact, as well as influenza, which is great. And I wish I'd known about this technology a decade ago when it existed. The mandatory mask wearing, Colorado Department of Education says we don't have to do that, but we're doing that, especially in places where we can't quite get to 6 foot. So we're a little short in for the elementary school for that. But, and I apologize if you can't hear me. I just got a message for the first time that my internet is unstable. So sorry for that. So
yeah, it might have cut out a little.
yeah. So when you talk with Picken County Health, they say 6 foot's ideal. You can go down to 3-ish if you have to. When you wear a mask, the actual spread, and you read the research on this, it's about 2 inches. And that being said, anyone in the field will also say 20 feet is better than 6 feet. 6 feet is better than 3 feet. But 3 feet with the mask, you're in really good shape. And
Yeah.
so,
I just feel like even with like 3 feet's not going to be possible either. With 20 people in my room, I'm not going to be able to keep 3 feet from each child. So I just want to say that's okay. I'm okay with that. But I think that the idea that I'm still social distancing in my classroom kind of needs to be addressed as it's not possible.
well, we're trying to say, we're trying for 3 to 6 feet as much as practicable. And and thank you for bringing that up. We do need to be very
I
transparent.
just think parents should know. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. And I want to thank you for bringing that up. Great.
Thank you.
Sure. I did see another hand somewhere. Heather, did you, Heather or somebody? The hand went away.
LA
Okay.
Canals.
Sorry?
Hi, can you hear me?
Is that, oh, Ellie. Hi.
Tap to speak. Okay,
Yeah.
now I'm speaking. Hello. Quick question about the elementary school as well, because it is going so well the 2 days a week for our family. To piggyback on that last question, if the children are 3 feet away, if we're now saying that 6 feet isn't the number anymore and it's 3 feet, will the children be taking off their masks inside the classroom for snacks or lunch ever? Because I know right now they are occasionally. And my second question is, will this HVAC system, the air quality, will it be completed before all the children go back in the classroom? And third question would be, at what size class is no longer a cohort and just a class, in terms of what the pediatric community would recommend as a cohort?
So those are good questions. I'll try to tackle them in order. So the air quality, the air upgrade, we want that in place before bringing all the kids back to Aspen Elementary School. And that's our highest priority for installing that in the district, is to get the elementary school finished, right? So that's number one. So number two, the idea of a cohort is a group of kids. And, in many districts, they're trying to get down to what is our normal class size for their cohorts. So our cohort would still be 20 kids. They stay together. And that's part of the goal of increasing our ability for contact tracing and minimizing exposure outside the cohort. Because when, and I say when, because eventually we will deal with COVID-19 in our school district. We've already dealt with it at the cottage and, dealt with it pretty aggressively. And we have to thank Emily Anderson and Elise Dreher for their incredible work around that, as well as the support from Picken County Health. So we did respond to that, and no more transmission occurred within that group. And that's what quarantine looks like, right? We shut it down. We knew from when to when. Took us a little while to get the dates exactly right because everybody's counting 10 and 14 and from here and there, but we got there. And so the idea of a cohort is a group of people who stay together for the bulk of the day, so that should COVID-19 come into that cohort, we can close that cohort down and take that entire cohort to remote learning for the 10, 12, 14 days that we have to. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, it does. Will you tell us if the air filtration system is not done by the time we're all supposed to have 20 kids in a classroom together? And will they not do snack and lunch inside with the mask off if they are within 3 feet of each other?
So we are working on the feeding and that sort of thing. Actually in cabinet tomorrow, working with Tennille, our food services director, and we're discussing that tomorrow and how we're going to address that. The other question you have is about letting you know if the air quality piece isn't in place by the time we've brought all the kiddos back. What I'm trying to say, and to the board members on here, if we don't have that air quality solution in place at the elementary school, I am recommending we stay in the hybrid model until we do, okay? So I just, to every parent on here, if we don't have the air quality solution in place, I want the elementary school to stay in hybrid. That being said, I've also told the company that's installing it, if it's not done by the 26th, I'm installing it, and they're gonna keep that warranty in place. So I'm really trying to incentivize that. So, you know, we have every intention of making sure, we already have a lot of the materials that will be installed have been delivered to the school district. Jorge Calderon, our new facilities director, has been proactively opening ceilings in the elementary school, and we're going to make sure that they have the materials they need. Here it is, put it in, let's go. Here it is, put it in, let's go. So they have the full support of the district to get this thing done. Does that help? And we will get back to you with the food piece in a tight space fairly soon. Okay. I see a hand on Sierra.
Oh, sorry, it's Brenda. I just didn't change my name. My daughter's in high school, and my question is, when she goes back to school, some of her schedule is she has a class in the morning and then she doesn't have a class till the afternoon. Are they required to stay there that 3-hour period? Or is she able to leave and maybe do the last class online? Or what's your thoughts on that?
Sarah, would you like to answer this question?
Sure, this is coming up. Initially, we had hoped to keep everybody here to minimize movement. And really the only rationale for that was that we don't want to have to shut down the entire school. Because our kids are still moving from class to class, we don't have the small cohorts like the other 2 buildings. So we were trying to kind of minimize how many kids were coming in contact to each other. That said, I know we have a lot of students who are concerned that they might have that midday free period. So Becky and I are looking at it. As of right now, we are asking kids to stay on campus the entire day, but we are looking at, is there a feasibility if somebody wants to just go home? So I'm going to say to be determined on that once I start crunching all the numbers. Sorry, I can't have a better answer for you.
We do appreciate this kind of conversation as it allows us to really tackle the problems in advance. And as Sarah said, oh, this is really coming up more and more. What are we going to do about it? And so, you know, one thing, you know, one of the neat things about the high school is their strong instructional leadership team. You know, they've been really good at figuring out what to do in these sorts of situations. So stay tuned for more communication from the high school. Again, you know, I do want to say, please feel free to lodge your questions in the chat feature at the bottom. And, you know, things that pertain to the high school, we will get the answers from the high school. Things that pertain to the middle school, we'll get the answers from the middle school. You know, the outdoor feeding tent, you know, when it goes in at the elementary school, it'll be really big with lots of picnic tables, I hope. But when that happens, actually, I just made that up. But I'm hoping that we'll have a good answer for elementary school soon about what to do about snack time and that sort of thing. But I can tell you, as long as the weather holds, I hope they're eating outside, which is what we're seeing these days. So as long as the weather holds. Other questions while we're here? I'm looking for hands in the many folks who've been here. Well, I'm not seeing or hearing anything.
Dave, there's somebody with their hand up, Stokes. They've been
Stokes.
waving at the screen.
I'm sorry, I just saw Leslie Bixel's hand go up.
Hi,
Leslie,
so you talked to, are you going to Stokes or Leslie?
Leslie Bixel, right? And then Lauren. So Leslie, you're first.
Hi, I missed the first part of the meeting just because I was at work. Is the elementary school planning on opening up 5 days a week?
Are you with your father?
So
I think someone cut me off there. I just was wondering if the elementary school is planning on opening up 5 days a week on the 26th, just because there's a lot of us that our kids are going to have to, if they're closed on Wednesday, go to supplemental programs, which is great that the city's doing that, but they are intermixed with kids from all cohorts and classes and ages. So.
right. And actually one of the reasons for coming back as fully as possible is to cut down on that commingling with other cohorts. So Mr. Bastian, Chris, you've formed a task force at the elementary school. Where are we on the 4 versus 5 day conversation?
Yeah, we're still working on the schedule, Dave, but leaning towards a 5 day. We're trying to balance it with lesson planning time for teachers as well as professional development from the district as well. So in the past, of course, we've exited the building at 1:55. Looking right now like it will be a 5 day. I don't know the length of that day at this moment.
Fantastic, thank you. And we will get that answer out to the parents in the very near future. We have to coordinate with transportation. We have to coordinate with the professional development requirements and of the district as well. So thank you. All right, Stokes, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, hi, good evening, Dr. Baugh. You talked a little bit about how the middle school will be like with the students going to their homerooms for the whole day, but can you clarify, will the teachers be teaching multiple core classes, or will they still basically just be with their reading teacher all day? And then you talked about the smart boards, will the other classes be on smart boards, or will the main homeroom teachers be taking over other core classes?
Great. So that's a really good question. And the way it works is that eventually, so it's a phasing thing. So we're looking at 2 weeks where they go in, and it's mostly the students go to the classroom. They meet, I believe, with their math teacher initially. It's like the homeroom, and then so there's math, and then it's remote learning for the next couple of core classes. Dr. Liz, are you still on?
Yeah, no, that you've got it right. I think the main thing to think about, which Dave mentioned, is it's a phased approach. So in the first phase, kids will remain in their homeroom, and a teacher will be teaching live if it's their content area. When it's not their content area, they'll still have the kids in the class, and another teacher will be teaching live in their classroom, but they'll be using this wonderful technology that our tech team has installed with a mini camera on top of the smart board. The teacher will be teaching, and the kids in the other classrooms will be getting a broadcast of a live lesson. And so they'll have microphones, they'll have cameras, and there'll be a licensed teacher or substitute in each of the other classrooms. So if the main teacher says, all right, now we're going to work on, this physics experiment. I want everyone to see if you can make this battery light up or whatever it is. That will be facilitated in another classroom by a different teacher, but it'll be the same lesson. So it won't be like they're all on a Zoom meeting. It's just that they won't all be in the same classroom at the same time. The next phase from that would be that the teachers would rotate. So the math teacher would go to each different class to teach the math classes, etc. And then the phase after that would be where students begin to rotate, passing in the halls, going from one class to the other. But as Dave said, we're taking it in 2-week increments so that we can really track the progress of COVID, frankly. I mean, that's kind of what the State Department of Education has recommended, though, that sort of slow phased approach. And that's how we're planning on doing it. Really keeping an eye on the incident of the disease in our community and in our school and things like that. Does that answer your question?
A bit. It sounds a bit confusing, and I feel like it sounds like it will be difficult for the teachers to manage. Like, it sounds like there's going to basically be 100 kids in one class at a time. Like, some are in the class and the others are broadcasted, and how does that work with the communication of, like, now we hear them talking and communicating, you know, and I know for like some, they definitely need their kids to go back. But I guess the second part of my question is, if we decide to keep our son home, will he keep his teachers he has now, or will he be changed? And I heard the one part about how there would possibly be a separate thing, separate from the school, that would be done by the state. So if you could maybe talk about that a little bit.
So they're all going to be split into 2 cohorts. So at any one time, half of each grade level will be in the school building. And so our largest grade level is about 120 kids. So we'll have, say, 60 kids at that specific grade level will be in the classroom, divided among 3 teachers. So each teacher will have about 20 kids or less, depending on the grade level, in their classroom at a time. And so the most kids that one teacher would be teaching to would, you're right, be those 60 kids. But in each classroom with the 20 kids, there's a teacher facilitating the lesson and helping the main lead teacher implement that lesson. For kids that decide they want to stay remote, they would see that lesson that's being broadcast in their home. So we would have a way for them to access that. And then the second week for that same group of kids, that 60 kids, they're all at home with those same 3 teachers. And those same 3 teachers are now teaching the regular schedule in using the Zoom meeting. So in a synchronous model, the teacher is now teaching the way we're doing it now. So those are that's kind of the A cohort, B cohort model. Yeah.
I just have one, I have 2 quick questions. I'm not gonna hog it here. First of all, how can we say we're gonna have a cohort with the bus system? Question number 1. Secondly, can we change our technology so the kids can remain in school or hybrid?
Well, I don't know if Dave wants to jump in here, but with the bus, the reason that we're in these 2, the A cohort and the B cohort with the high school, and is that we've coordinated all of our A kids are also high school A kids. So that A group, while they'll mix on the bus, they won't be mixing with the entire student body. So they've kind of coordinated that. And as far as the technology goes, you know, we hope that we're going to be able to move through this and get into our in-person learning, as Dave said, by November 30th. So we're trying these different approaches. Our tech team has been doing an amazing job of bringing they call it a sandbox. So one of the classrooms is set up with all this technology, and teachers can go in there and practice and figure out what does it look like when I'm broadcasting my lesson. So I feel like they're doing a pretty great job with technology. But I don't know if that was exactly your question.
All right.
And again, to the busing thing, it's not an ideal situation. And again, we're encouraging, all our families, like if you don't mind driving, or if the kids can take a bike, or, weather permitting for bikes, we encourage that 100%. But that being said, we're using the layered mitigation. The masking piece is huge and super important. We're continuing to get as much fresh air in there as possible. And we're trying to outfit the buses now with HEPA filters to purify the air in the bus, to really super filter it for when it's really cold. So as a district, we're taking a lot of steps to really try to provide this layered protection. And again, I want to encourage every family, to really think about this as I'm not trying to discourage, I'm trying to encourage, but we're all in a constant risk mitigation evaluation, right? What's the best for our family? And we've heard over and over from families that in-person learning as much as possible is best for their family. So that's, and we also know that happens to be the best educational model. So that's why we're really trying to get there. So I want to be mindful of the time. I keep seeing more hands popping up as we're running towards the end of our time. So if we can try to be fairly quick with these questions, we'll run through the next 4 questions. And then anybody else, please put your question in the chat box. We're going to go Leslie Bixel, Lauren, Heather, and Gwen. So Leslie, what can we do for you?
Oh, no, I think I just forgot to lower my hand again. Sorry.
Oh, great. That's my favorite kind of question. Lauren, what can I do for you? What can we do for you? Lauren.
Hi, so I'm actually Mary Courtney, but this is my Lauren is my daughter's Zoom account. Anyway, quick question. So for the kids who want to stay home because it's just one in-person, face-to-face with their teacher for the first 2 weeks and maybe 4 weeks, my son specifically says, well, I'll just stay home. They will be able to participate in class even from home, like they are currently right now with the online model?
Sure.
Okay. Second question is, last year the bus came approximately 40 minutes prior to the start of the day. Should we expect that similar type of timeline with the school with the new start?
Probably within a few minutes of that. Again, we have a staggered start, so we can drop off all the elementary kiddos. We're sanitizing the buses and then going back out for secondary.
Right. So I'm talking like for the middle school, it starts at 9, so then each one you pick up approximately. It's like 40 minutes.
Email R. Mahaffey at Aspen K-12. She's our director of transportation, and she can answer that question specifically for you.
Great. So schedule is available. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, she's been working on it nonstop. Okay. All right. Heather Stevenson.
Hi. Mary Courtney had a similar question to mine, but I just wanted to clarify, that you could have a kid who's in a class at school on a smart board and then not synchronous with their teacher, but they're having the same lesson as what's happening in a classroom nearby because the teacher can only be one place at once. At the same time, the kids at home are having the same lesson. So the kids that are at school with a teacher that's not their primary teacher and the kids at home are having a similar experience as the other kids, the ones that are, I'm basically saying there's only a certain number of kids that are actually having this in-person lesson, correct? And the rest of them are all kind of in the same boat, whether they're at home or at school?
No, can I just answer that, Dave? For the middle school, that's not correct. The kids at home are going to be having their own set of teachers with their own lessons, and they will not be having the same lesson as the kids that are in school. They'll have to be on a different team. We're dividing the school into, every grade level is divided into 2 groups. So you've got one group that's learning at home on week A, has a different set of teachers and different lessons.
I understand that I'm talking about the kids that are all in week A, let's say.
Yeah.
So, but let's say some of those kids are not in school. They chose to stay home for whatever reason. They'll be in the same, lessons as their teacher, primary teacher, and the kids who were the overflow.
Correct.
The other way to frame that would be if a student is assigned to Group A and then decides to stay online, they would get a similar experience to what the kids have in school, except that they don't have access to a support teacher, right? They'd have the primary instruction, but they don't have somebody to say, you know, hey, Dr. Ba, what about this question here? How should, you know what I mean? So you would get a very similar experience, but not quite identical.
Except that the kids who are not with their,
sorry?
oh, I'm sorry, except the kids that are not with their primary teacher, that are in the classroom with the smartboard, are asking questions of another teacher or support person, not of their primary teacher, correct?
For that particular content subject, right? So they'll get math, language arts, and science, say, and so if you're sitting in the math class, you'll get it from the math teacher. But if you're sitting next door, the math teacher would be zooming it into that classroom, right?
Okay, thank you.
Again, this is part of the mitigation strategy, as well as the ability to, if we do have COVID come into the school, track it faster, smaller cohorts, nice and tight, okay? Okay, great. All right, Gwen, last question of the evening.
Yes, hi, can you hear me? I think, great. I think that Mary Courtney and Heather asked a lot of my questions already, but just to confirm, if they are at home, if my kids decide to stay home, they're AMS students, but if they decide to stay home, they're still gonna get a live teacher teaching them for every single class, every single day. Is that true?
Yes, that's true. I mean, we're designing this so that half the kids are in person and half the kids are at home. So we're not designing it for the mixed grouping. So it's not going to be the perfect scenario when, if your kid's at home and the rest of the kids are live, we're going to be teaching to the kids that are live. That's the whole problem with the concurrent learning. But, you know, so some of it, they might need to record some of the lessons. We haven't quite figured out exactly how we're going to deal with. I mean, so far I've only had a handful of people that have said they want their kids to stay with remote learning. And so we're still trying to figure out, we've been looking at that and trying to figure out how can we make sure that they're getting a solid education when they're not participating in the online portion of it. The remote portion is dialed. We've got that week figured out. It's the week when everybody else is in school that it's just not the best teaching model, as you can imagine.
But the goal is in 2 weeks to shift to where each teacher moves around the room. And that's actually a model that is being used in many sort of middle schools around the country because it reduces exposure and, you know, the transmission rates. So we hope to get there in 2 weeks and evaluate in 2 weeks. So
yeah, I think prior to today, we were all under the impression that they'd have one teacher and that they were zooming in to all their other classes. So now I understand it's more of it's a little bit more interactive because of the smartboard piece of it, right? I mean, isn't that?
Well, and the teacher support.
Yeah, and I mean, the goal is to have it to feel like you're having a live class, even if you're in the class next door, to feel like you're getting you have a teacher, you have your student colleagues or peers around you, and that you're able to have that kind of live learning experience. And I think when we first were talking about the concurrent learning, whether everyone's on the Zoom, whether they're live or at home, and that model just didn't make sense. So now we feel like what we're working to deliver for the live students is more interactive.
Thank you.
Okay, well, and thank you. And if you have more questions specific to the school, please send the question to your school principal or through the chat at the bottom, and we'll get that posted on our website. Okay, and I really want to thank everyone for participating tonight, and stay tuned for more updates. We appreciate, really, truly appreciate everybody's flexibility and can-do attitude. We know that, you know, school in the age of COVID is not what we would really want for anybody, but we are going to do the best we can to make this the best experience, best learning experience possible for everyone.
And Dave, can I just interrupt one last thing here, parents? Just a reminder, we will be having virtual coffees at each of the schools where you can have a chance to have another crack at these questions and ask some of the things that might come up between now and then too. So just know that there will be a regular communication coming from the schools.
Thank you, Theron. I really, really appreciate that. We will be, like Theron said, lots of regular communication. We understand there's a fair bit of change going on as we're adapting to new learning models, and we get that. So we're going to try really hard to communicate and communicate with great regularity as to what's going on at each level. So thank you for reminding me of that, Theron. Greatly appreciate that. And again, I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening, principals, administrators, teachers, parents especially. You know, we want to make this as good as possible for your kids. Thank you very much and have a great evening.